Hey guys, welcome back. So today I'm going to share with you guys 5 easy steps to plan out your next garden. I'm going to share all of my 2021 plans. So let's go ahead and jump in, shall we? I will say my first few years of gardening, I did not plan anything. And the more I started to garden, the more I started to plan. And the more I plan, the more success I have had. So I personally think planning out your garden is a definite must. And if you haven't thought about it, definitely do, because this is definitely going to help you out a lot. So step 1 is organize your seeds. Write down an inventory of things you want to grow, things that you need to get your hands on as far as seeds go. And speaking of sow, if you've not ordered your seeds yet, I definitely would do it as soon as possible if you plan on starting from seed, simply because there could be seed shortages again this upcoming year. So if you didn't garden this last year, or if you didn't seed start in the 2020 season, seed companies did have a seed shortage period, and I made a separate video in September. I ordered a bunch of seeds, and on the back it did state that they were for the 2021 year already. And I have had problems ordering certain types. Like, I finally got my hands on mint. I didn't think the variety of mint was going to be a tough one to get my hands on, but I've been trying to get mint seeds for the last 5 months. So keep that in mind. Just far warning, I don't know how much truth there is in that, but there's one thing we can learn from 2020, it's to always be prepared. All right, next, step 2. Once you have all your varieties written down on a piece of paper, this is where I like to go ahead and color coordinate just when I need to plant things. So I have 4 categories on things when they need to be planted. So 1, direct sow. These are things that we are going to directly put a seed outside. Then we have before our last expectant frost, after our last expectant frost, and then also things I've already planted. That's it. So things like my perennials and my garlic, things that are already planted out there. I wanted to go ahead and make sure I made note of, and also when I map out, that way I know that area is already covered. So those are the 4 categories, and I like to just, put a little color beside each word. So once I have everything written down and color coordinated, I actually like to rewrite everything back out onto another sheet of paper and have everything categorized into their own categories. So one reason I like to do that is because when I look at this piece of paper here, I have a blue over here and then I have a blue over here. And in my brain, I wouldn't think of those things being together. So I like to group everything together onto another sheet of paper, and then I move on to step 3, which is finding your average last expectant frost date. And for me, I live in 6B, which is April 13th. It obviously could be a few weeks before or a few weeks after that, but either way, find your last expectant frost date, and that's where we are going to actually find everything for step 4. So step 4 is to find out when you need to seed start. So go back on the back of your seed packets, and it will say how much length before this. So for example, this cabbage here says 8 to 10 weeks before your last expectant frost. So I actually have all those categorized together, and I write that down just beside that, because that will let me know that I need to start these seeds 8 to 10 weeks before. Something like a cabbage is going to take a lot more time to start over something like a flower. I obviously wouldn't start my flowers in February. They won't be planted in my garden until about May. So it's really good to have all of these timelines written out before we go and actually map out our entire garden. I will say, again, if you only do this, if you only do the first 4 steps, that's great. If you only do step 1, cool. But if you do all 5 steps, I promise you, you'll have so much more success. I honestly think step 5 is the biggest step, and that is mapping out your garden. I will say I went a little extra with my map, but it was mostly because I wanted to give you guys an even better visual, because again, I'm so visual, I like visuals. So I created this little map on my graph paper here. I really like it. This worked out really well. I have never gone this in depth when I've done this just on my own. I've still used graph paper and I've still done all of this, just not as colorful. Just I thought it would be a better visual. Keep that in mind. You don't have to go as crazy as I did. For example here, so I have my spring and summer garden completely mapped out. I also have a few other pages over here. So I have a trellis area that we'll have, and this is also my tomato area over here, which is actually the fall space. So my fall space that I currently have now is going to be the full tomato space for next year, which is really cool. Either way, this is the rest of my garden, which I completely mapped out. One thing I think is really cool that I did is you can see here I have 15 broccolis that I can plant in the spring, but once those broccolis are done, I can turn around and plant 21 cayennes. And I know that because I already have it spaced out and mapped out on my map. I only use these little flappy areas on the spaces I knew for sure I could plant 2 rounds of things. So like my onions here, I probably won't be able to harvest my onions until about July. And at that point, I'm not going to be starting too much more until the rest of my fall stuff. And I don't have my fall space planned out on this yet. We'll get into that once it gets closer to midsummer of next year. But either way, you can see how that gives you a really good visual on how many things I can plant in certain areas of my gardens. Like that is 2 zucchini, but then in the spring, we're gonna have roughly anywhere from 6 to 8 cabbages in that same area. So again, it's just really cool to get yourself some graph paper, sit down, read the back, see how much, this is the tedious part of gardening, and I will say this, and this is the part that always drove me crazy when I would plant, because I never did this planning. I would just have a bunch of random stuff I started, and then the day of planting I'd have to pull out all my seed packets again and be like, okay, so I need to plant this 18 to 24 inches from the last one. All right, planted, done. And then you go on, and it's just an ongoing thing, and it just takes up a lot of time. So if you can do all of this pre-work on the front end, this will save you so much time, I promise you. And then again, give you such a better visual on what all you have room to grow in your garden. So if you have any questions on this, please leave me a comment below. I would love to help in any way, shape, or form I can. But I figured I would go ahead and share with you guys as well all the varieties I plan on growing for 2021. So for peppers, I have paprika, bell pepper, cayenne, jalapeno, serrano, and banana pepper. So I have grown all these varieties minus paprikas and banana peppers. So I actually wanted to preserve some banana peppers, and I also want to dry all of my paprika peppers to make paprika powder. I love drying my own herbs and spices. They are so yummy. Next, for beans and peas, I'm actually going to be doing Kentucky pull beans and then sugar snap peas. So last year, I did a ton of bush beans. And one problem with that, with having a small backyard garden, bush beans take up a lot more space than a trellis bean or a pole bean, you would say. So a pole bean takes up a lot less space. So if you have a small garden, put that into consideration. By the time I really thought of all that last year, again, it was already too late. So planning ahead is key. For tomatoes, I'm going to be adding a few varieties next year. This last year I did all Romas, but I'm going to add San Marzano and Amish paste as well. So for cucumbers, I have the Bosling pickling. For melons, I'm doing the Charente melon, which is actually a French cantaloupe that's about 2 to 3 pounds big. This is one I'm going to be trellising as well, which I'm really excited about. I've never done a fruit, which I guess tomato is a fruit, but I've never done a fruit. So I'm really excited to do a melon. So for brassicas, I'm doing broccoli, red cabbage, green cabbage, and bok choy. For garlic, I already have planted my chestnut red, and then also I got this soft neck white variety that I had no idea what it was from my local nursery. So both of those are planted. For flowers, I am adding a ton of flowers next year. So last year, I just had a ton of hyssop and some sunflowers. But this next year, I'm adding climbing nasturtiums, which I'm really excited about. I'm gonna add another type of sunflower. So I'm adding the Goldie, Honey Bear, and then also Mammoth. Cosmos, zinnias, then also marigolds. And then for squash, I'm gonna do just your standard green and yellow. So we have Black Beauty and Early Prolific. Hold on, I need a sip of water. My water is running out, but we're almost done. Okay, so then I'm gonna do loofah. And then for greens, I have some collards, romaine lettuce, iceberg, Russian kale, and mustards. And then I do want to get my hands on a blueberry bush. So I don't have a blueberry bush. I obviously can't order anything like that right now, but I have a note to find a blueberry bush. So I'm hoping to get a blueberry bush. For herbs, parsley, dill, basil, green onion, oregano, cilantro, peppermint, thyme, rosemary, and sage. And then for root vegetables, I have carrots, and then also I need to get my hands on some turnips. My husband randomly last night was like, did you order turnips? And I did not order turnips. And that reminds me, I need to order turnips. So I'm going to write that down right now. Okay, so that is my list for 2021. I am very excited to grow all the things. But I hope this made you guys excited to start planning your 2021 garden. If you have not started to think about it, again, definitely start to think about it. This is the time. I will be starting seeds, the second, third week of January. So keep that in mind. We are about like 6 weeks out if you live in my garden zone of 6B. But even if you miss this window, you guys, you have a lot of time. Like I even wrote this down, or I don't know where I wrote it down, but I think, for example, I have close to 190 days of growing time. Again, when it comes to planning things like this, you will notice timelines on when things should be planted and when they won't be planted. And I know for me being a beginner gardener the first few years, I did not understand that I could not grow lettuce in July. I had no idea, and I wasted a lot of time, effort, and money doing that. I'm obviously really excited about this upcoming garden year. I'm really excited to share this journey again with you guys for the second year. So if you didn't know, I did share pretty much my entire garden of last year, so I will link that playlist in the description box below. It's really cool just to see how much the garden evolves. Like last year, I had no intention on the garden evolving that much, but it did. So my plans, they're subject to change, guys, but it's really good to have a really good base going into the upcoming garden year. So again, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. Subscribe so we can all garden together in 2021, and I will see you guys all in the next video. Bye!